The side split is a posture where the legs are straddled apart. Side splits mainly stretch the adductor muscles of the inner thigh. Most beginners will start with a narrow straddle. With persistence and consistency, it will be possible to lower progressively closer towards the ground. Hip flexor strength is needed for anteriorly tilting the pelvis. Hip abductor and external rotator strength is needed for actively straddling the legs apart. The Cossack squat is ideal for improving side split mobility. Thanks to single leg loading, we can effectively reduce side-to-side imbalances between our left and our right legs. Cossacks, they're great for strengthening adductors as they lengthen into a straddle shape. A final benefit from progressive Cossack training is hip flexor strength. This hard-earned hip mobility translates to improved capacity for anterior pelvic tilting during our side splits. Begin in a wide straddle with the feet pointing outwards. The foot needs to be kept on the floor with the toes pointing forwards. This orientation is a must for targeting the adductor muscles. Don't worry if the straight leg foot begins to roll outwards. Ankle inversion mobility plays a role in how flush the foot can remain during our Cossacks. To ensure active stability, drive the knee outwards when squatting down. This technique opens the hips, allows increased depth, and is safe on the knee joint. The mental cue of lowering down actively is helpful for Cossacks. Thinking of remaining on tension ensures the hip flexors and adductors control the negative. Those struggling with flexibility can regress by elevating the squatting side. Over time, reduce the height and work towards the floor Cossack squat. Cossack squats are best performed one side at a time. Always start with the weaker or less flexible leg first. Rest 30 to 60 seconds before moving on to the other side. Be sure to do the same number of reps on both legs to mitigate any side-to-side asymmetry. The Cossack is a classic compound which has plenty of room to grow. Sinking into a deeper Cossack squat is the priority first and foremost. Progressively increasing the load without sacrificing squat depth is a long-term endeavor. Incorporating a longer active pause at the bottom is a potent overloading method. This hip and adductor compound works for all levels, from mobility beginner to advanced practitioner. The Taylor's pose allows us to strengthen the adductors as they stretch towards end range. This exercise shines because with weights, we can accurately modify intensity and patiently increase mobility. Begin against a wall and pull the feet in close towards the groin. If the feet start slipping, just block them with a weight or something sturdy. During our set, we want to arch the lower back to create room for the hips to open. Lastly, ensure the heels remain in contact at all times and you're good to get started. The Taylor pose sequence involves a few steps, but it's simple once you go through it once. Start off by driving the knees outwards into yoga blocks. Elevation height depends on your mobility. Choose an object height which stretches you, yet is just within reach. We're looking for a challenge which still allows a maximum voluntary contraction. This activation teaches the glutes to externally rotate at the hip joint. Continue immediately into unloaded bodyweight reps. The goal here is to drive the knees down hard and fast, pausing briefly at end range with a big glute squeeze. We're taking advantage of the short-term CNS benefits from our previous overcoming isometrics. Now grab some weights and let's do the real work. Loaded Taylor's pose reps. Balance the dumbbells on the edge of your knees and begin working up and down through range. During the concentric lift, I'm squeezing the adductors and trying to bring the knees together. During the negative lower, I'm squeezing the glutes to drop the knees towards the ground. The main point regarding tempo is pausing and control. At the top contraction and bottom stretch, a pause reinforces strength gain. Lifting and lowering with a deliberate tempo is a must for loaded Taylor's pose. Understanding programming is simple. We have activation followed by bodyweight reps and we finish with the weighted reps. This sequence is helpful for beginners and those who are advanced. We get increased neural drive. Range of motion is practiced and strength is gained. Increasing range of motion is always our top priority. As the months progress, the knees should be reaching closer towards the floor. Once the knees can comfortably touch the floor with loaded reps, elevate the hips and the feet. This setup will allow us to stretch and strengthen the adductors at even longer muscle lengths. If looking to advance Taylor's pose even more, a block between the feet is a go-to option. Don't forget to keep the feet in close towards the body, especially when you're making things harder. When it comes to weight, most people can begin with around 5 to 10 kilos per leg and progress to 15 to 20 plus kilos per leg. Load used is based on strength and body size. The main takeaway is don't be afraid to load up. After all, the adductors are mechanically strong in Taylor's pose. To get the most from our isolated adductor training, we need to be deliberate and also patient. By giving equal effort to our activation, body weight, and loaded reps, this is the recipe for making the Taylor's pose effective for everyone. Do you want to get flexible as an adult? Learn the best stretches for lasting flexibility with Fitness FAQ's workout programs. Shop Fitness FAQs and move freely today. The closed hip fire hydrant is useful for teaching the legs to abduct into the side split actively. The exercise can be performed using either a bent or a straight leg. A shorter lever is going to be easier compared to a longer lever thanks to the force requirements. The lateral glute muscles, hip flexors, and the TFL will become stronger with closed hip fire hydrants. Stronger hip abductors and hip external rotators is a worthy pursuit. Improving muscle function on the shortening side of the hip is useful for overcoming adductor resistance in side splits. The hip needs to remain parallel relative to the ground. Imagine keeping an object still on your lower back during fire hydrants. This strict setup forces the hip muscles to work in the range specific for side splits. While keeping the body rigid, squeeze the glute hard and abduct the leg from the floor. Reaching the leg away is helpful for getting the sensation and activation right. You should feel an intense contraction on the side and also the front of your hip. Concerning alignment, we want the knee in line with or slightly forward of the hip. Avoid the mistake of crunching the spine laterally and lifting the foot too far forward. The other alignment mistake is shifting the leg too far backwards. This is cheating with the hip extensors. Rocking sideways to lift the leg is the most common fire hydrant error. Film yourself and make sure the pelvis is not moving during closed hip fire hydrants. In terms of progression, given perfect technique is maintained, here's how to keep improving. Using a target to reach for helps progress objectively. The visual and tactile feedback is great for standardizing exercise intensity. Over time, increase the height of the target to increase range of motion. Adding ankle weights is guaranteed to keep fire hydrants challenging and effective. Patience and consistency is a must for the closed hip fire hydrant. Be aware it's going to take time for the results to become evident. Gradual progress is the reality of exercise like this, especially those that involve strict technique. Have confidence knowing that your diligent effort is going to translate to improved side splits. Keep grinding. The horse stance is a popular exercise for improving side splits. Horse stances share a similar technique and posture, making them functionally transferable. There's plenty of horse stance variations for long-term progress. A proud chest with thoracic extension helps overall posture and mechanics. During the horse stance, we want to squat down and backwards by arching the lower back, aiming for an anterior pelvic tilt. During the descent and the hold at the bottom, use the glutes to externally rotate at the hip. When rising from the bottom, squeeze the legs inwards to recruit and strengthen the adductors. Don't forget to point the feet outwards, finding a position which feels comfortable relative to stance width. It's important we drive the knees out and ensure they track over the middle of the foot. Concerning squat depth, aim to lower until the hips are around knee height at the bottom. Once you're able to confidently drop the hips well below knee height, progress with a wider horse stance. The most common horse stance setup is the 5-step. To measure distance, start with the feet together. One action equals a step. Toes out, heels out, toes out, heels out, toes out. This is a 5-step setup. The 7-step and the advanced 9-step horse stance is the long-term goal. Form improvements are a useful method for progressing mobility training. Do your best to tilt the pelvis anteriorly and drive the knees out hard at end range. Be sure to include a more strict eccentric and a longer pause at the bottom. Basically, take pride in refining the execution of your reps or your holds with horse stance. In addition to squatting with a wider stance and a greater depth, progress load. We want to gradually increase the weight used without sacrificing range of motion. Increasing the weight used should be a long-term secondary goal with the horse stance movement. Horse stance progress is directly correlated with a deeper and wider straddle. This is no surprise as the horse stance is essentially a bent leg side split. Sweet, so how long does it take to unlock the side splits on the floor? It's going to take around 12 to 18 months to notice significant differences in accessible side split mobility. As with all training, progress is going to be fast when starting and slow down after the beginner gains are made. Patience and consistency mean everything for side splits. We need to allow time for the adductors to adapt progressively at longer muscle lengths. We need to allow time for our tendons and ligaments around the knee and the hip to acclimate. We need to avoid rushing the process as getting injured can seriously delay our goals. Most importantly, we have to show up consistently. We need to do all of the work and adopt a long-term growth mindset.